how that goes.
Yeah.
So, thinking about the question of what's the reason for whatever this thing in the form, this, why is it called this, or why is it done 3 times instead of two, or why does it face this direction? Why is it done with the left side instead of the right? All these kind of questions that might come up, um, which I think of as meaning questions. What's the meaning of the fact that we do it left foot first, or only to the south, or whatever? Well, I don't know. If I had a time machine, probably wouldn't waste it on going back to ask somebody. So how come it's 5 times instead of four, or whatever? One, because probably wiser things to do with the time machine. Two, there is no one person, despite what some stories say, that I could just show up and he invented it all. Probably didn't happen that way anyway. Probably early on, there was argument and changing of mind and growth and development and various ways of doing things. So there's no clear answer then either. We just imagine it that way. Might have been clearer some time ago. But I don't think I can go back to a point in time and there's one person who says, well, sure. The reason that it's called grass sparrow's tail instead of grass eagle's tail is that my sister had a pet sparrow. Like I don't know. Um, so does that mean we can't know what these things mean? I would say, yeah, it kind of does, by and large. But it's not quite the same as is there meaning with all these things or with that particular thing or that series of things? And the lesson that I want to impart is that um, here's the way I like to remember it. I was sitting right over here some years ago. Um, I was sitting right there, and my student was sitting right there. And it's a really difficult time for her. Like, mom passed away, a cancer diagnosis, kind of, just really tough time. So, not surprisingly, we weren't doing this in our class. We're like, let's just have a seat, let's talk things through, make a few notes. And we were making some progress. I was probably talking some Taoist stuff, and she was probably nodding or nodding off. I don't know. And sitting on the floor there under the big window, there's a lot of sky, sitting there. And she kind of interrupts. She's like, "Oh, Steve." And we look, and there's this hawk that's flying over quite low and uh, rising in the circle, staying in our view. And we both just kind of, watch it do its thing for a minute. And she's just like, "Oh, that was, you see, it was like 40 feet away." And like, and then we saw, and I was like, that was pretty special. Glad we saw that. And then she goes, "So what does that mean? What does a hawk mean? Like, or a circling hawk, or a hawk that comes in?" And I said to her, well, "Got a bunch of books right over in the bookcase. You can look it up. And if we pull 20 books out, we're going to probably find 18 different or 23 different meanings for a hawk, or a flying hawk, or a circling hawk, or a rising hawk, or something. And the Kiowa are going to say this, and the Algonquin will say this, and the Hindu will say this, and the Southern Chinese Kung Fu people will say this. And my teacher used to talk about this when we did hawk energy, but my Xingyi teacher did this thing about." So we're not going to find, even though I'm selling these books, we're not going to find the meaning of the hawk in there. But you might find some meaning that resonates in one of them, like, "Oh, that really, for whatever reason, reminds me of how my mom used to sing this song," or "I've always loved that tradition, so I'm kind of keen on that anyway," or "in the description, it mentions something else that means something to me." Uh, so try that meaning on for size for a while, maybe for a long while, but recognize that the meaning is a thing that you bring to the thing. And that may change. It may not. You may just kind of pretty much for your whole life ascribe some meaning to some type of thing, like the moon or whatever, and it just sticks, and that's how it is. And that might even become the tradition in your family because you pass it on to the grandchildren by telling them. Great. And it might also be like they learned something else from their friend at school, and that really, for whatever reason, clicks the way that their rabbi mentioned it. That really works for them. Okay. Um, but I said to her, like, she was looking for something to hang on to in that moment, like things were tenuous. And she looked at me as the wise teacher, like, what do hawks mean? And my Rolodex was like, oh, I got a bunch of hawk stories, a bunch of meaning of hawk. And people have said that. I was like, it's not my job to tell you what it means, but to help you see that you can bring meaning to everything. And if the meaning that you bring to it serves some valuable purpose, healing, growth, insight, enlightenment, I'd say good for you. Is it objectively what the hawk? No, it actually probably just meant the sun had been warming up the air and the hawk was able to get some loft this morning and it was hungry. So it was, that's probably what the closest to objective meaning was. But if you want to bring some subjective memory meaning to it and say to yourself, every time I see a cardinal, it reminds me of my mother, that's you bringing that meaning. And it's sweet and beautiful and maybe helps you with your grieving. Great. Like, and pass it on to your kids. But I wouldn't pass it on to the kids in the sense of the cardinal does mean this objectively. In the same way, I'd say that is poisonous to eat. That's kind of objective. But recognizing that it's a subjective act of relating to things in the world, patterns, items, energies, what have you. And then I think if you can do it in a valid and valuable way, such as I said, growth or healing or insight, like that's pretty cool. Great. And that particularly applies to studying old arts because there's a bunch of people that will say, here's what this move means. And sometimes they mean it in terms of martial function, like, okay, that's kind of objectively a bit more testable. But why is it tiger or something? Nobody knows. We could say generally the Chinese from that era found tigers to be a positive thing, not a negative. Okay, so that might shape a little bit of my understanding, but I still can't say I know. Or that's not true. I can say I know. And all the books, people are saying the things they know. But I think it's much more important to say, recognize my role in the subjective relating to things when I seek meaning, particularly in old things where the meaning can't actually be known. Something that arises today, we could figure out what the meaning is. You know, some new company has a logo, you could probably call the person and say, so why did you pick red? And they're like, well, the reason is this. It's my wife's favorite color. Oh, okay. Like you can time machine your way to that and actually get an answer. That's fine. But with a lot of the sort of things we study, we can't really objectively say, have arrived at the meaning here. Just can't be done. Okay? Questions? Okay. So